You're listening to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories and the latest information from people who fight addiction every day. I'm Mike Tourville, your host and author of Voices from the Fallen. Thank you for listening, for following, and most of all, for sharing with people you care about. Make your voice count too. Thanks everybody for joining us again at Healing Voices Project. I'm Mike Tourville, your host. Back in 2021, when I wrote Voices from the Fallen, it opened up my eyes in so many ways. The families I met with shared their challenges, and each expressed a desire for others to learn from their stories. One of those stories is called A Mother's 15-Year Nightmare, and although it's about her son Joe's struggles, it's more about the devastating effect on their family. It's never about one person, as entire families are affected. And each of these 8 stories from Voices from the Fallen are what inspired this program. There are so many stories to tell and people to learn from. Today we're going to read the first chapter of the book called A Mother's 15-Year Nightmare. Thanks all for listening. A Mother's 15-Year Nightmare. Joe. June 2004 was an eventful month. On the first Saturday I graduated from high school. The following Saturday, the 12th, I turned 18. My mom's birthday was a week later. On the last Saturday of the month, I broke my thumb. This was a pivotal time in my life, the dividing line between childhood and adulthood. In all of those events, the broken thumb had the largest impact on my future. My sister Lisa was 7 years older than me and had already moved out of the house. My younger brother Tom was still in school, 2 years behind me. I was looking forward to my adult phase, but I was ready to enjoy the summer before getting serious about my future. On that last weekend of June, my friends and I had a few harmless beers, and I got in a fight with my cousin and punched him in the head over something stupid. The following day, my hand was swollen and blue. I immediately went to the doctor and was told I broke my thumb. After surgery a few days later, I was sent home with my hand in a cast and a bottle of Percocet. This incident began a horrible 8-year ordeal of drug addiction that devastated my parents, ruined my ability to earn a steady living, and almost permanently destroyed my family. Time after time, I thought I had handled it and convinced myself and others I was clean for good. And every time I went back, I would beg them to help me after all the fights and lies and manipulation. So many times I'd give them hope, only to crush it as carelessly as twisting your shoe on a cigarette butt. As many times as I quit, I went back, every single time, except one. The first prescription of Percocet did its job of taking pain away. I told the doctor the pain persisted, and he gave me a second bottle. That was easy, I thought to myself. Despite my best effort, it didn't work a third time. The doctor refused, saying I should be pain-free and off the pills. I needed other sources, so I reached out to a few friends who were doing OxyContin. They hooked me up in no time. I bought whatever I could. It wasn't cheap, but I could afford it, at least early on. My tolerance built up, and the more I took, the more I needed. I quickly learned more efficient ways of taking the pills from my experienced friends. We'd get our pills, crush and snort them for a quick high, sit back, hang out, and watch movies. Tuesday night was movie night. Friday night was party night. We'd drink, smoke a little weed, take pills, whatever we had. The pills cost $30 to $40 each, and I was quickly running out of money. I became desperate and didn't care who I got them from. Consequences didn't register. I was incredibly selfish, but not conscious of it. Deep down, I knew it was wrong and had to stop, but I craved the drugs so badly I couldn't function without them. I would rationalize in my brain that I could stop any time. Never right now, I'd think. Maybe another day. It was just too overpowering and became more important than anything else. It literally took over my life. I viewed my family as interfering obstacles to work around, to lie to, or better yet, to avoid whenever possible. I became detached, cold, and distant from the people who loved me. Sue, Joe's mother.
Several months after Joe's thumb surgery, I noticed that he wasn't as energetic as before, and it didn't happen overnight, so I was slow to notice the difference. And then he'd nod off at inappropriate times, like at dinner or during a conversation, and those were the first indications. He was working hard at the paper company, but I thought, hey, this kid's 18. He shouldn't be so tired. I was also struck by how broke he was. He made good money and lived at home with us, so it made little sense. His personality was changing, and I was getting concerned because he had spent so much time alone. I grew suspicious and asked for a few probing questions, but he was evasive, and I always wanted to treat him as an adult and respect his privacy, so I didn't press the issue too hard.
I hadn't thought about using heroin before, but one of my friends was a full-blown heroin addict, and I was curious. He came over one day and asked if I wanted to try. I didn't really like it the first time, but tried it again when I was on my own. That was all it took. The end of wondering. It was one of the best feelings in my life. Next thing I know, I'm off the pills and only shooting heroin. It was so much better and cheaper too. Sue.
About a year had gone by and nothing much changed, or at least I hadn't noticed. Joe was in his bedroom one night and I was calling him from the kitchen. He wasn't answering, so I went to his room and I opened the door. And what I saw took my breath away. He had a needle and a syringe in his hand and was about to shoot heroin into his veins. I screamed at him to put it down. "Just let me finish," he desperately repeated. "Go away and let me finish." But I refused, and he begged me to leave. He was panicking because I was depriving him of the high that he was anticipating. I had never seen him like this before, and I told him I could not just sit there and let him shoot himself up. We argued and he left, and it was not a pretty scene. He stayed all night, and when he returned in the morning, he refused to talk about it. And when he did start talking, he lied. He said he was stopping, telling me all the things I wanted to hear. He wanted to appease me just to get me off his back. I knew he was lying, and we continued to find needles all around the house and even in plain sight. He was careless and disrespectful, and I didn't know if he was being defiant or stupid, but either way, he didn't seem to care.
Whenever my parents gave me a hard time, I'd leave. That's all. I had no defense, no rational argument, so walking away was the easiest thing to do. Only when I had nowhere to go and no options did I pretend to give in. Complying was easier, so I just lied to shut them all up. I was going to work at the paper company every day on time and had no issues. I wasn't bothering anybody and thought they should just leave me alone. Work was slow and I got laid off, so I was home more than usual. My parents' patience wore thin and they grew angrier with me by the day. I'd drive them crazy for a few days, get in a fight, and leave again. Even my brother was on my case, and I couldn't take it any longer. I'd stay at a friend's house, but I wore out the welcome mat there too. I finally agreed to go to detox. Tom, Joe's younger brother. I always looked up to Joe, but he acted like an idiot, completely different person. When he wasn't home, things were fine, but when he showed up, everything turned upside down. Everyone seemed mad at each other with lots of shouting and slamming doors. It was miserable, and I couldn't stand him being around. Sue.
When Joe agreed to go to detox, we were hopeful. Looking back, we were a little naive too, because as soon as he'd get out in a short time, he'd start using again. The cycle continued. Months of struggling, false promises, hopeful days, only to be followed by painful responses.
Some nurses at the detox were amazed at how low my blood pressure was, and they thought I should be dead for the amount I was using. My motivation for going to detox wasn't to stop using drugs. I wanted a place to sleep without being harassed. I got a few odd jobs and even worked at my dad's shop for a while. I showed up on time, did my job, but I was mentally absent. I functioned all day just to get through, while all I thought about was getting enough money to buy more heroin. Any money I earned went straight to the habit. Mark, Joe's dad. One morning, I was getting out of the shower with my towel and caught Joe in our bedroom going through my pants and wallet looking for money. I yelled at him to get out, and he ran like a scared dog. I had to wonder, who was this guy? This child Sue and I brought up was a complete stranger to us. Sue.
It was after midnight, and something woke me up from a sound sleep. And it wasn't the sound, but it was more like a weird sensation that had stirred me awake. I opened my eyes slowly without moving a muscle, and through the darkness, I saw Joe on his stomach, creeping along in a slow motion like a trained Navy SEAL would crawl undetected through a swamp in enemy territory. It seemed surreal until I saw him slowly extend his arms to my dresser, where my pocketbook was, and then it hit me like a lightning bolt, and I jumped right out of bed and I shouted, "Joe!" And he just jumped and ran out. We had a terrible fight, and he left, as usual.
I was pissed off at everybody. My parents believed nothing I said, and it was harder to get away with anything. It was like they had an antenna and were ready to jump on me for everything. They didn't believe my lies. I was getting caught taking money, and they lost all trust in me. I went to a friend's house for a couple of days and then was told to leave and found my way to a homeless shelter for a bed. I hated the shelter. I was tired, hungry, and had no money. Sue.
After about a week, Joe came home begging for help. And in all that we had gone through, I never had seen him like this. After so many visits to detox, we lost hope and wondered when it would ever end. Just one agonizing defeat after another, with a constant worry that his next use could be fatal. So many days I'd wake up thinking, is this the day that Joe dies from an overdose? That thought never left my mind. Mark and I, we were beaten, exhausted, and at the end of our ropes. He agreed to go to rehab, and we were relieved to see him get into Phoenix House for a few months.
Mark, Joe's dad. When Joe came home, we allowed him to stay as long as he passed a drug test, which meant providing a urine sample. One night, I knew he was high, and I asked him to pee in a cup. He seemed a little too confident, and I knew something was up. Joe came out of the bathroom, placed the cup on the counter, and told me to dip the strip in it. I picked up the cup, put it back down, and immediately searched the bathroom. Within 30 seconds, I found a small plastic container wedged in the toilet tank with a bit of urine left in it. I brought it out and asked him if he thought I was that stupid to test cold urine. He finally admitted it was his friend's urine he had hidden in the toilet tank. Sue.
Nothing was working. We were beyond frustrated, and we didn't know where to turn. We made arrangements with family in Texas for Joe to go to a rehab in that area, one that did not use methadone. 2 months into the program, we visited Joe. He said he was dying and had to get out, and we told him no. And we said he was more likely to die if he got out and started using again. We tried to drill it in his head that completing the program was the only way to save his life, and it broke our hearts to refuse, but we stuck to it despite knowing the pain he was in.
I lost the energy to fight anymore. I agreed to go to Texas to go to detox, not knowing what to expect. At first, detoxing in Texas was tough, especially with no methadone program. Over time, it was a little easier because the separation from my old friends meant I had no sources to get drugs from. But the physical battle was hell. It was like I had a bad flu with cold sweats and body aches. Insomnia made it much worse, and the constant diarrhea was another thing. When getting high, you're constipated, and that's what the stomach pain is all about. In Massachusetts, they give you methadone to detox so you aren't as sick. In Texas, all I got was Tylenol and clonidine for blood pressure. Tom, Joe's brother. I was glad Joe went away. Finally some peace around here. I saw what he was doing to our parents, and I was mad at him for stressing them out. They didn't deserve any of that. 4 months into my stay, I had an unexpected scare. I was out biking with a few girls I had met at detox, and we came across a copperhead snake. Thinking it was harmless, I tried to pick it up with a stick. Like a lightning bolt, it sprung up and bit me in the right hand. My hand swelled like a boxing glove, and they rushed me to the hospital. I was told later the smaller copperhead snakes are typically more venomous. I spent 4 days in the hospital, 3 of them in intensive care. Upon release, the doctor said I would have died if not treated. The bill was over $79,000 for treatment and the antidote. The worst part for me is I could not take the pain pills during my stay because of my withdrawal. Only non-narcotic medicine could be used. I went back to the detox facility and to finish my last month and then moved in with my aunt. I stayed clean and stuck around for a few more months. I was in Texas for 7 months. I came home to get back to work and start fresh. Sue.
Joe was home less than a month and relapsed. We had an argument. He took off in his car and we didn't hear from him for 3 days. I prayed he was safe and I remember wishing that he would just get arrested so at least I would know that he was contained and under supervision. I'd rather him in jail than left on his own to use drugs on the streets. I wasn't sure how much more of this I would be able to take before I collapsed myself. I was fearful of Joe dying and often wondered if it would just kill me before it killed him.
In Texas, it was easier, but coming home, I couldn't escape the old environment. The places, people, and pressures were right in front of me, which sucked me right back in. But it wasn't the same. I was just sick and getting sicker, so I went to rehab again to get on a methadone program. I didn't know what else to do. When I got out, I didn't drink alcohol or smoke weed. I went to meetings for a year and made some new friends. I went on the methadone program because I believed in my head it was the only way I would stop. Getting off methadone to me was 10 times worse. The body pain and diarrhea lasted a good year. I felt lousy every day. But I planned to do it for 6 months, get off, and stick with it. My counselor tried talking me into staying on, but I started weaning myself off. The difference this time was I was deciding myself. It wasn't my parents or a counselor or anyone else, just me. It wasn't easy, but within 2 months, I just didn't go back. After 8 years of using, here I am today, 8 years clean. When I was getting high, I was never scared. I just always felt good. I didn't have a care in the world. While that might sound appealing, it's just not real. It's hiding behind a false protective wall. Stress and worry are a normal part of life and can help you cope with day-to-day challenges. Escaping reality only delays facing problems that don't go away just because you hide from them. Living a clean and healthy life is immensely better, but I have a lingering fear. If I ever need treatment that requires pain medication, I know I will struggle. My current job is physically hard on my body, and one day down the road, I might need something to deal with pain. That's the scariest feeling ever. If I'm injured, I can't take anything. I can live with that if it means being alive and sober. Sue.
Joe had been clean well over a year when his brother Tom started, finding evidence of Tom using. I think maybe I was so devastated that I had just blocked it out. I can picture those little blue pills as clear as day. I remember finding them in his pocket and cigarette packs. Why was I looking when I really didn't know? Maybe when doing laundry? I remember his girlfriend at the time telling me to look at his arms because she had saw track marks. And when I also found out little bags and spoons, I really started losing it. I wasn't sure how I was going to go through this again, and I just wanted to die. He would not talk to me about anything, and I believe in my heart that he hated himself for being in the same situation as his brother. After all that Tom witnessed with Joe's struggle, I could not believe he would go down that same path. Tom went through a period of depression, and he had a hard time getting past it, which contributed to him starting, and I just kept begging him to go to detox. And when he would finally get in, I'd feel better, and then a week later it would start all over again. Twice Tom overdosed and was given Narcan to revive him. The first time the police called me and told me he was found lying by the roadside unresponsive. Someone driving by noticed a body on the sidewalk and called 911. The police treated him with Narcan and an ambulance brought him to the hospital. I drove immediately to the ER, only to find him walking out of the door on his own. I was shocked that they even let him go so soon. He was equally shocked just to see me arrive, but he easily agreed to come home with me. And the second time, he was found unconscious in his car at a grocery store parking lot. I was later told by an employee putting shopping carts away that they thought he was dead, and they called the police. And this time, I made it to the hospital before they discharged him. I called the detox center, urging them to take him immediately. And after 2 near-death incidents, I wasn't leaving him alone for 1 second. I told the counselor at detox I didn't want him to come home, as he needed to go through the program before I would allow him to come back. And he told me how much he hated it there, but as painful as it was, I refused to let him return home. He was my baby, and I wanted him alive. Tom was in and out of detox 15 times and spent time in 3 different halfway houses. He had to be homeless first before they would take him in, and if they had any bed available. Tom used for about 4 years, but I am happy to say that he's been off since 2017, and off of methadone since January of 2019. He is finally becoming himself again, and as much as I want to know why he went down that road, I will never really have the answer. I choose to let things be because I am finally getting my real son back, both of them. And after 15 agonizing years, our family is finally whole again.
And that's the story of a mom's 15-year nightmare. Thank you all for listening. And to hear more about the book, Voices from the Fallen, and the other stories, and to learn more from our guests in our program, visit our website, healingvoicesproject.org. Thank you all for listening. See you soon.